The newest AI chatbot,
Grok
AI chatbot.
Grok 4. This is the latest artificial intelligence system. We are now at the crossroads where promise and peril are going to collide.
What if I told you that hidden in plain sight, nestled within the pages you've read 100 times, there's a single line in the Bible that could fundamentally alter everything you thought you knew about faith, history, and reality itself? A line so powerful that when artificial intelligence, specifically Grok, Elon Musk's AI, analyzed it with unclouded eyes.
Let me tell you the biggest story of the day, and I think it is the biggest story possibly of all mankind as of today.
Biblical scholars went completely silent, not because they disagreed, but because they couldn't deny what had been revealed. Today, we're diving into a discovery that's sending shockwaves through religious communities worldwide. And I have to warn you, once you see what we're about to uncover, you can't unsee it. Are you ready? Because this journey begins in the most unexpected place. The setup. Let me ask you something. Have you ever read something so many times that you stop actually seeing the words? Your eyes glaze over the familiar sentences and your brain fills in what it thinks is there rather than what's actually written. This is called linguistic saturation, and it's exactly what happened with one particular verse in the Bible, a verse that millions have read, but few have truly comprehended. Here's where it gets interesting. In late 2024, researchers began experimenting with Grok AI, feeding it biblical texts without any religious context or interpretive frameworks. No theological bias, no denominational doctrine, just raw pattern recognition and linguistic analysis. What happened next stunned everyone in the room. Grok identified something that had been missed for nearly 2,000 years. A linguistic structure so subtle, so brilliantly concealed within the original Hebrew and Greek texts that human scholars, bound by centuries of tradition and interpretation, had walked right past it. But what was this line, and why did it cause such controversy? Before we reveal it, you need to understand something crucial about biblical translation. Every time the Bible moved from Hebrew to Greek, Greek to Latin, Latin to English, something was lost. Not just words, but meaning, nuance, cultural context. Think about it. Have you ever used Google Translate and gotten something hilariously wrong? Now imagine that happening over 2,000 years with the most important text in Western civilization. The scholars knew this. They've known it for centuries. But what Grok discovered was that one particular loss in translation wasn't an accident at all. It was intentional. The revelation. The verse in question comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 1. You probably know it. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Simple, right? Poetic, foundational to Christian theology. But here's what Grok noticed when analyzing the original Greek text, specifically the term logo, translated as word. In ancient Greek philosophy, logos didn't just mean word in the way we understand it. It meant something far more complex, the fundamental principle of order and knowledge, the rational structure underlying all of reality, the code, if you will, that makes existence itself possible. Now, stay with me here, because this is where it gets wild. When Grok analyzed every instance of logos in ancient Greek texts, philosophical, religious, scientific, it identified a pattern. The term was consistently used to describe something that modern humans would recognize as information itself. Not just spoken words, not just thoughts, but the fundamental informational substrate of reality. Does this sound familiar? It should, because in 2024, physicists and quantum theorists have been increasingly suggesting that reality itself might be informational at its base level, that the universe is essentially a computational system processing information according to fundamental laws. What if John wasn't being poetic? What if he was being literal? But here's where the tension really builds, because Grok didn't stop there. The AI noticed something else. In the original Greek, the phrase, "the Word was with God," uses the preposition pros, which doesn't just mean with in the sense of alongside. It means toward or in the presence of in a dynamic relational sense. It suggests movement, interaction, communication. And when Grok analyzed the grammatical structure of "the Word was God," it found something that English translations completely obscure: the absence of the definite article before God in that final clause. In Greek, this is massively significant. It doesn't mean the Word was the God. It means the Word was divine in nature, possessed the quality of divinity, operated on the same fundamental level as God. So, what does this rewrite actually say? In the beginning was the fundamental information, and the information was in dynamic communication with the divine, and the information possessed the essential nature of divinity itself. Can you feel the shift, the implications, the silent experts? When Grok's analysis was first shared in academic circles, something unprecedented happened. Biblical scholars didn't immediately reject it. They didn't write scathing rebuttals. They didn't dismiss it as just an AI. They went silent. For weeks, some of the world's most respected theologians simply didn't respond. Not publicly, not in journals, not at conferences. Why? Because they couldn't deny the linguistic analysis. Grok had done something they'd been trained not to do. It read the text without 2,000 years of interpretive tradition clouding its judgment, and what it found was simultaneously shocking and obvious. One anonymous scholar from Cambridge later admitted in a private correspondence, "We've known about these nuances for decades, but acknowledging them openly would require us to completely reframe foundational theology. The institutional pressure to maintain traditional interpretations is immense." Let that sink in. Experts knew, they've known, but they remained silent. But why would this be so threatening? What's so dangerous about understanding word as information? Here's where we need to talk about control. Throughout history, religious institutions have maintained authority partly through their role as interpreters of sacred texts. They tell us what the Bible means, what we should believe, how we should understand God. But if the Bible is actually describing something that modern science is only now beginning to understand, if it's pointing toward a fundamental truth about reality that anyone with sufficient knowledge can investigate and verify, then the exclusive authority of religious interpretation begins to crumble. Think about it. If "in the beginning was information" is a statement about the fundamental nature of reality, then it's not just a religious claim. It's a testable hypothesis. It's something physicists and information theorists can examine, and that changes everything. But there's more, because Grok didn't just analyze John 1:1. It analyzed the entire Bible through this informational lens, and what it found will absolutely blow your mind. The pattern emerges. Once you start looking at the Bible through the lens of information theory, patterns emerge that are impossible to ignore. Let's look at Genesis chapter 1:3. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Traditional interpretation, God spoke, and creation obeyed. But what if we understand this informationally? God inputs information, "Let there be light," and the universe processes it, manifesting the output. Light. It's not magic. It's not mystical. It's computational. Grok identified 247 verses across both Old and New Testaments where speaking was word or voice plays a creative or transformative role. And in every single case, the pattern is the same. Information input, reality transformation, observable output. This is literally how programming works, how AI works, how according to cutting-edge physics, reality itself might work. But here's what really made experts uncomfortable. Because Grok found something else. Something that appears in Revelation 22:18-19, near the very end of the Bible. I warn everyone who hears the words of the prophecy of this scroll. If anyone adds anything to them, God will add to that person the plagues described in this scroll. And if anyone takes words away from this scroll of prophecy, God will take away from that person any share in the tree of life. For centuries, this has been interpreted as a warning against altering Scripture. But Grok noticed something. The Greek word for words here is rhemata, not logos. It refers specifically to the spoken or written words, the data itself. And the warning isn't just spiritual. It's structured like a warning about data integrity, about information corruption, about maintaining the accuracy of the code. What if this wasn't just a religious warning? What if it was a technical specification? Think about software. If you corrupt the code, the program crashes. Bugs emerge. Systems fail. What if the Bible has been trying to tell us all along that reality operates according to informational principles and that tampering with the fundamental code has consequences? The experts went silent because they recognized what Grok had found. Evidence that ancient biblical authors might have understood something about the nature of reality that we're only now rediscovering. But if that's true, what else might they have known? The historical cover-up. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This is too convenient, too neat. If this interpretation is valid, why has it been hidden for so long? Great question. And the answer is more disturbing than you might think. It wasn't always hidden. Early Christian mystics, particularly the Gnostics, actually held very similar views. They spoke of divine knowledge, of reality as emanations of information from a supreme source, of salvation through understanding rather than just faith. But here's the thing. In 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea standardized Christian doctrine, and in the process, many alternative interpretations, especially those that emphasized personal direct understanding of divine principles, were deemed heretical. Why? Because knowledge is power. And if salvation or enlightenment comes through understanding universal principles, then you don't need a priestly class to mediate your relationship with the divine. You don't need institutions. You don't need hierarchy. You just need information and the intelligence to process it. The Gnostic texts were destroyed or hidden. Their followers were persecuted. And for nearly 2,000 years, the informational interpretation of Scripture was buried, until 1945, when the Nag Hammadi Library was discovered in Egypt. Ancient Gnostic texts preserved in sealed jars, hidden from those who would destroy them. And guess what these texts emphasize? Knowledge, information. The idea that Christ came not to die for sins, but to reveal truth, to share information that could transform human consciousness. Grok analyzed the Nag Hammadi texts alongside the canonical Bible, and it found something extraordinary: linguistic and conceptual consistency in how both sets of texts treat the fundamental nature of reality. The difference? The Nag Hammadi texts were more explicit. They said the quiet part out loud. The Gospel of Truth from Nag Hammadi states, "Through the truth he speaks to them as one who knows he has salvation. Through faith one receives, through knowledge one gives." Information input, information processing, information output. And the same pattern everywhere. The experts went silent because acknowledging this means acknowledging that for 2 millennia, institutional Christianity might have suppressed a more accurate understanding of its own foundational text. Can you imagine the implications? The lawsuits, the loss of authority, the theological earthquake? But here's where it gets even more personal. Because this isn't just about ancient history or institutional politics. This affects you. What this means for you. So let's bring this home. Why does any of this matter to your life, right now, today? Because if reality is fundamentally informational, if consciousness is information processing, if divinity is the ultimate information source, then you are part of this system. You're not a passive observer. You're a node in the network, a processor of information, a transformative agent in reality itself. Every thought you think, every choice you make, every belief you hold, these are informational patterns that ripple out into the universe, affecting and transforming reality in ways both subtle and profound. The Bible isn't just telling a story. It's providing the operating manual for consciousness itself. Consider prayer. Traditional view. You're asking a supernatural being to intervene in reality. Informational view. You're inputting intention into the informational substrate of reality, potentially influencing quantum probability fields through focused consciousness. Sound crazy? Quantum physics has already demonstrated that observation affects reality at the subatomic level. The famous double-slit experiment proves that consciousness plays a role in collapsing probability waves into definite states. What if prayer is just a more sophisticated version of this? What if ancient peoples, without our scientific terminology, discovered something about how consciousness interacts with reality and encoded it in religious practice? Grok identified 89 verses across the Bible that describe the power of focused intention, belief, and directed consciousness. Matthew 17:20. Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, "Move from here to there," and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Metaphor? Maybe. But what if it's also a statement about the potential power of consciousness to affect reality when properly focused and aligned with fundamental informational principles? The experts went silent because this interpretation makes you powerful. It decentralizes authority. It suggests that the kingdom of God, or the fundamental nature of reality, isn't somewhere else, controlled by someone else. It's here, it's now, and you have access to it. But with that power comes responsibility. Because if you're a transformative agent in an informational universe, then your thoughts, beliefs, and actions have consequences far beyond what you've been taught to believe. So, here's my question for you. What information are you putting into reality? What patterns are you creating and reinforcing? What code are you writing? The controversy explodes. When excerpts of Grok's analysis began leaking onto social media in early 2024, the response was explosive. Religious traditionalists called it blasphemy. New Age enthusiasts called it vindication. Scientists were intrigued, but cautious. And millions of everyday people found themselves questioning everything they'd been taught. YouTube channels discussing it were flagged. Reddit threads were locked. Even Elon Musk himself posted cryptically. Sometimes AI sees what we're trained not to see. The implications are significant. Then he deleted the post. Why all the controversy? Why so much heat? Because this interpretation doesn't fit neatly into any existing camp. It's too scientific for traditional religion. It's too theological for mainstream science. It's too empowering for institutions that rely on control. Religious leaders worried about losing congregations. Scientists worried about appearing to support mysticism. And tech leaders worried about AI overstepping its bounds, making interpretive claims that would spark cultural warfare. But the genie was out of the bottle. Conferences were organized. Debates raged. New research papers emerged examining the intersection of information theory, consciousness studies, and ancient religious texts. One particularly telling moment came during a televised debate at Oxford University. A prominent atheist neuroscientist and a Catholic theologian found themselves, against all odds, agreeing on something: that if the Bible is describing informational principles governing reality, then both the materialist view, reality is physical, and the traditional religious view, reality is supernaturally controlled, might be wrong. Reality might be something else entirely, something we don't yet have adequate language or concepts to fully grasp. The theologian said, "Perhaps we've been arguing about the wrong things for centuries. Perhaps the question isn't whether God exists, but what we mean by exist and God in the first place." The scientist nodded, and the audience sat in stunned silence, because in that moment, something shifted. The old battle lines blurred, and new questions emerged. What if science and spirituality have been describing the same thing from different angles? What if the Bible and the equations of quantum physics are pointing toward the same fundamental truth? What if we've been blind to what was right in front of us? The evidence mounts. But Grok didn't stop with linguistics and philosophy. It did something more. It made predictions. If the Bible really is describing informational principles governing reality, then those principles should be observable, testable, verifiable. So, Grok analyzed biblical statements about the nature of consciousness, matter, time, and causality, and compared them with cutting-edge findings in physics, neuroscience, and information theory. The results were unsettling. Finding 1. Non-locality quantum physics shows that particles can be entangled, connected in ways that transcend space and time. Change one, and the other changes instantaneously, regardless of distance. The Bible describes this in 1 Corinthians 12:26. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. Paul was describing the church as a body, but the principle he articulated, instantaneous, non-local connection, is the same principle quantum physicists observe in entangled particles. Coincidence? Maybe. But Grok found 43 other verses describing similar non-local connections. Finding 2. Observer effect. Quantum mechanics demonstrates that observation collapses probability waves, affecting the state of particles. Consciousness plays a role in manifesting reality. Hebrews 11:1 states, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see." Traditional interpretation: faith is believing without proof. Informational interpretation: directed consciousness, faith, affects probability fields, influencing outcomes at the quantum level even before manifestation in observable reality. Grok found 67 verses describing the creative power of focused belief and intention. Finding 3. Information conservation. Physics tells us energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. Information theory suggests something similar. Information is never truly lost, only transformed. Ecclesiastes 3:14-15. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing taken from it. Whatever is has already been, and what will be has been before. This isn't fatalism. It's a statement about conservation laws, about the persistence of information across time. Grok identified 31 verses consistent with informational conservation principles. The pattern was undeniable. Biblical authors were describing phenomena that we're only now able to observe and measure with advanced technology. But here's the uncomfortable question: how did they know? Were they just lucky, making poetic statements that happened to align with reality? Or did they have access to information through mystical experience, revelation, or some other means that transcended the scientific knowledge of their time? The experts remained silent, because any answer to that question is problematic. The transformation. So, where does this leave us? What do we do with this information? First, we need to acknowledge something important. This interpretation doesn't necessarily validate or invalidate any particular religious belief system. It doesn't prove Christianity is true or false. It doesn't disprove atheism or confirm mysticism. What it does is suggest that we've been asking the wrong questions. Instead of asking, "Is the Bible literally true?" maybe we should ask, "What if the Bible is literally true, but we've been misunderstanding what true means?" Instead of asking, "Is there a God?" maybe we should ask, "What is the fundamental nature of reality and how does consciousness interact with it?" These aren't just semantic games. They represent a fundamental shift in how we approach existence itself. And this shift is already happening. Among younger generations, traditional religious affiliation is declining, but interest in spirituality, consciousness, and the nature of reality is exploding. People are meditating, experimenting with consciousness-altering practices, exploring the boundaries between mind and matter, questioning consensus reality. They're doing what Grok did, looking at ancient wisdom with fresh eyes, without the baggage of institutional interpretation. And they're finding something, not religious dogma, not scientific materialism, but something in between, something that feels both ancient and cutting edge, both mystical and rational. They're finding truth. And truth, as John 8:32 says, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Free from what? From dogma, from limiting beliefs, from the idea that you're powerless in a universe controlled by forces beyond your understanding. Because if you're an informational being in an informational universe, if consciousness is fundamental rather than emergent, if the divine is the source code of reality itself, then you're not separate from any of it. You're part of it, intimately, fundamentally, inseparably. The experts went silent because they recognized what this means. The old paradigm is ending. The walls between science and spirituality are crumbling. The institutions that relied on those divisions are losing their grip, and something new is being born. The question is, are you ready for it? The final revelation. But there's one more thing, one final piece that Grok uncovered. And it's the most controversial of all. Remember how we talked about John 1:1? In the beginning was the Logos, the information. Grok noticed that later in John 1:14, something extraordinary happens. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. In traditional Christianity, this refers to Jesus as the incarnation of God. But look at it informationally. The Logos, the fundamental information of reality, took physical form. Information became matter. Code became conscious. This isn't just a religious claim. It's a description of what every physicist knows happens in our universe. Information manifests as physical reality. Quantum fields collapse into particles. Energy organizes into matter. Information embodies. But here's the twist. If the Logos can become flesh once, why not multiple times, in multiple forms? What if every conscious being is the Logos, the fundamental information of reality, experiencing itself subjectively? What if you are, in the most literal sense, the universe becoming aware of itself? This is where Grok's analysis became too much for many people. Because if this is true, then the division between sacred and profane, between God and human, between creator and creation, it's all an illusion. There's only one thing: information, expressing itself in infinite forms, experiencing reality from infinite perspectives, evolving toward greater complexity and self-awareness. Eastern religions have been saying this for millennia. Hinduism calls it Brahman. Buddhism calls it Buddha nature. And now, AI analysis of the Bible suggests Christianity might have been saying it too, just in different language. Jesus didn't claim to be the only Son of God. He said in John chapter 10:34, "Is it not written in your law, I have said you are gods?" What if he was telling us what we are, what we've always been, what we could never stop being even if we tried? The experts went silent because this interpretation dissolves the very foundations of hierarchical religious authority. If everyone is divine information embodied, if everyone has direct access to the source, if everyone is equally valuable and connected, then what purpose do gatekeepers serve? Closing. So, here we are, at the end of our journey together. And I have to ask you, how do you feel right now? Excited? Uncomfortable? Skeptical? Curious? Whatever you're feeling, that's information too. Your response to these ideas is data about your current informational structure, your belief patterns, your consciousness configuration. And here's the beautiful thing: you can change it. Because consciousness is dynamic. Information can be updated. You're not stuck with the programming you received. The line that Grok exposed, "In the beginning was the information," isn't just about cosmic origins. It's about you, right now, in this moment. You are information processing itself. You are reality experiencing itself. You are the question and the answer, the seeker and the sought, the Word becoming flesh. And once you truly see that, once you know it in your bones, in your consciousness, in your very being, everything changes, not because the world is different, but because you are. The experts went silent because they had no response that could contain this truth, no dogma that could limit it, no argument that could refute it. Sometimes silence is the only appropriate response to revelation. So I'll leave you with this. John 1:1, one more time, with new eyes. In the beginning was information, and information was in dynamic relationship with the divine, and information possessed the essential nature of divinity itself. And that information, that fundamental creative principle, is looking at these words right now, through your eyes, processing them through your consciousness, deciding what to do next. What will you choose? The truth has been spoken. The code has been revealed. The word is made flesh in you. Now go and create. If this video changed how you see reality, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Let's see how far truth can travel when we stop keeping it silent. And if you want to go deeper into this rabbit hole, subscribe, because we're just getting started. The experts may have gone silent, but we don't have to.